Hey Mike, you asked me to prepare a short guest video talking about how I feel regarding Bryan Fuller's appointment as showrunner of the as yet unnamed CBS Star Trek series. I am both very happy about the appointment and cautiously optimistic, or worried, or terrified. But that's for an entirely different set of reasons, which I'll get into second. I think Bryan Fuller is a great choice. Now, I haven't seen Hannibal, which is the show that everyone seems to be referencing when they talk about what a great idea it is. I hear it's a great show. I just haven't happened across it yet. Why I'm happy about his appointment is due to his three previous shows. Wonder Falls, Dead Like Me, and Pushing Daisies. And upon first glance, you might look at those and think, how the hell does that make you excited about Star Trek? Um, Wonder Falls is about a girl who receives messages from inanimate objects telling her to go help people. Pushing Daisies, his most famous show, is about a pie maker who brings back to life his ex-girlfriend, but if he ever touches her again, she'll die. And Dead Like Me is about a girl who dies and then becomes a reaper and, has to deal with all of that. In addition to, being emotionally vulnerable in her early 20s. Why I think it's a good fit is because Star Trek has always had a heavy dose of magical realism to it. I don't remember if it was Asimov or Arthur C. Clarke who said that eventually the technology in science fiction has to appear indistinguishable from magic. And really, there's not much difference between transporter beams and apparition in Harry Potter. It's just a magical way to get from point A to point B. And if you look at the history of Trek, from very early on, they had a lot of magical beings that they encountered with no scientific explanation for their existence. The Squire of Gothos in the very first season of the original series was that famous episode where they're kidnapped by some sort of a magical being and made to participate in all sorts of trials, and it turns out it's just a child. It's just a big magical child that's holding the prisoner, and eventually its parents come and tell him it's time to come home now, and he's like, "No, Mom." And what else? I mean, Q being the obvious example there, tormentor of Star Trek captains across multiple series. Q is basically God. And in DS9, with the whole mythos with the wormhole entities who are actually fourth dimensional beings, but then it turns out that there's also Paw Wraiths as well. Paw Wraiths being the sort of anti-wormhole entities, those evil creatures that Gul Dukat and Kai Wen eventually give themselves over to. And that fits well with his previous work. In Pushing Daisies, these are basically normal people who encounter magical, surreal situations that they have to deal with. And in Wonder Falls, no one is magical except for the main character, Jane, who just receives coded messages from inanimate objects who tell her to go do something, and then that ends up helping people. And when you think about that in the context of Star Trek, the crew of these ships are basically normal folk. You could easily transplant them into a U.S. naval vessel. This could actually be the crew of the aircraft carrier Enterprise, encountering various magical situations. So I'm very happy about that. What I am worried about is, I think, the same thing that everyone is worried about, is that this is going to be Star Trek in name only. The worst case scenario for me is that this is simply a continuation of the Abrams verse. It has nothing to do with the canon. It has nothing to do with the Star Trek universe that we have all spent so many hundreds of hours getting to know and love. It doesn't expand anything that we know about Trek. Even if it is set in the actual Star Trek universe, I'm worried that it's going to be more like the Abrams verse than it is like Trek. J.J. Abrams himself has come out and said that he didn't like Star Trek. when he was a kid, because it was too philosophical for him. He wanted to watch shoot 'em ups and bang bangs, and that's basically what he made. And then eventually he went over into Star Wars, which is really where his home was. Star Trek has always been much more interested in the implications of power and technology. You know, the many, many episodes of wrestling with the Prime Directive and when to violate that and when to not. So happy about Bryain Fuller being appointed. Worried that the studio is going to make him fuck it up and make it into just shoot, pew, pew, bang, bang. Because I'm fully aware that he's probably not going to have as much freedom in this as he had in his pet projects and in Wonder Falls and Dead Like Me and Pushing Daisies, because those are small shows that fly under the radar, and every single year studios have all sorts of one-off shows that, you know, just throw that shit to the wall and see what sticks. But this is a huge piece of property for CBS. You're talking a lot of money here, and I can totally see the studio stepping in and forcing him to just make it action-packed every single week. More explosions than last week. Even Michael Bay said slow it down with the explosions. So, yeah, wait and see. I'm happy about Bryain Fuller. I'm also worried. But worst case scenario, we can always end up adopting the new fan theory, which I believe to be absolutely correct, that the entirety of Enterprise was really just a holodeck program, and that fucking shit show never happened. Alright, Mikey. Bye-bye.